Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining. This is Humanity's Team. This is our mentoring for You Are Limitless. And we are so grateful that everybody is joining here. Look at everyone pouring in. So, this is our time. As people trickle in, just a reminder this is our time for questions. So, don't be shy. We have chat. If you'd like to ask a question through chat, just open the chat and type it in, and it tends to be the first questions that are asked will be answered. If we're feeling nice, we can even address raised hands. So if you'd like to come on screen, you can raise your hand and maybe we'll bring you in. So if you'd like your question answered, get it in quickly because this tends to get flooded pretty quickly. So without further ado, this question, and we already have the questions starting to come in. We are graced with the presence of Michael B. Beckwith, with the founder of Agape, and he is here with us now. And I think you'd like to start us off with a spiritual experience. Is this correct?
Peace and blessings, everyone. And first of all, thank you, and your soul is thanking you for signing up for the class, so that you are personally being involved in your own unfolding. This is a time in human history where the next stage of evolution comes from participation. It doesn't come from mere shifting of the environment or things of that particular nature or adapting to circumstances. It comes when individuals are participating in their own unfolding, which is what you're doing by being involved in this class, by being involved in the different exercises and the dialogues that I and Panache put together. And so let us just take a moment together as a collective and then turn within. And as we extricate our attention from the world of effects and circumstances and situations, and again, begin to be more keenly aware of a deep sense of gratitude and thanksgiving that we are allowing to permeate through our very being, where we're becoming grateful for everything, grateful for nothing, grateful for anything in particular, grateful for nothing in particular. We're just allowing ourselves to move into a state of gratitude that we exist, that we're alive. This clears the perceptual windows that we're able to see more clearly that this presence of love and beauty and intelligence and life itself is everywhere, permeating everything with its totality. We feel one with this presence. We're allowing ourselves to feel one with the presence. And that includes all the eternal verities. It includes every quality of the presence. We are a composite spiritual idea that contains all that life is, according to our unique pattern. So from this consciousness of oneness, I evoke the presence of love and beauty and intelligence and divine spiritual camaraderie for these precious moments together, knowing that as I am speaking this very word, there is a frequency and a vibration that's being activated within us all, and that everything is now working together for our individual and collective good, and we are impervious to anything that would hinder, block, delay, or obstruct the fullness of wisdom and guidance flowing through us in a language and in a way that we can understand. This is a powerful moment. And it is magnified by all of the individuals that are coming online right now. Every individual that comes in and is saying yes to the next stage of their own unfolding is magnifying this field, that it becomes an intense field of potential and possibility that transcends the world of belief, the world of race consciousness, the world of believing in lack and limitation. It transcends that world. And we live in a whole nother dynamic. This is what I'm knowing and feeling and giving thanks for. And this is what I feel good about. And something wonderful is happening, and I allow it to be so. Therefore, I can say, and so it is. Amen. So, as I welcome you to this moment, obviously, hopefully, you've gone through the first couple of modules. The first module dealing with awakening and coming to an understanding that humanity suffers from the inability to see reality. Reality is, of course, capitalized. It's not our reality. It's not our a little perception. It's that changeless reality of love and beauty and power and abundance that's everywhere. Our inability to see that allows us not to have a direct encounter and experience of it. You went through the second module, which is your real ID, coming to an understanding is there's a big difference between your personality and your real soul character. Your personality is forged by time and experience and the imprint of the world. And your soul character, your spirit, is timeless. And that's who and what you really are. And one of the purposes of your spiritual technology, the purposes of spiritual practice, is to come more and more in alignment with your real self that needs nothing, that has everything. And when activated, the manifestation process is enhanced for everything that you need, want, hope for, and desire, even in the three-dimensional world. So you've covered those two modules. I'm here with you to answer any questions. And so rather than me continuing to just talk because I can talk for the next hour, I would just open it up so we can have dialogue. We can deal with some questions here.
Yes, thank you, Michael, and thank you for the beautiful experience to get us in this zone here. So our first question is from C. Grant, saying, in Module 1, you stated we should connect to an emotional experience from our past. I have spent the last 40 years denying my emotions. While I understand the spiritual practice intellectually, is it worth doing from a cerebral aspect, or do I wait until I'm further along in my journey and more connect to my heart and emotions?
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to remember that particular teaching. One, you can't connect to the emotions cerebrally. It has to be, there's two levels of connecting with the emotional pattern. One is connecting, there's a difference between a feeling tone and an emotion. A feeling is emanating from the presence of life. We could use the word God, we can use the word life, we could use the word intelligence. That's a feeling. And so we connect with that by placing our attention on anything in our life that we feel good about. That there's some kind of coherence with reality there. And then we begin to amplify it through either breath and attention, meditating, contemplating on it, going in the past and connecting with an emotion to heal, again, is not cerebral. It just means that you place your attention, you think about a past experience and the emotions that past experience raised for you. And then you can sink into it and you can actually get the lie that the emotion is telling you. When there's an emotional reaction, it means that there's something that's being said that's not true. For instance, I'm not enough. I'm not worthy. I live in lack and limitation. Those emotions are not spiritually true. They may be evident in time based on perception, but they're not spiritually true. So you can actually go in, get the lie, and then begin to re-articulate the truth to yourself, embrace a higher feeling tone, and then watch your life change. So see, I'm hoping I'm answering your question, because when I'm teaching, when we did the class, you know, I'm in that moment. And so I hope I'm covering what you're asking.
Yes, I think you are, Michael. And you actually are segueing nice into this. The next question, which is from Ramona, asks, how do you define death if there is only life?
Mm-hmm. Death is passing from one room to another. In the Native American tradition, there's a word for death that means not here, somewhere else. And so if you think about an individual that you're in conversation with, and then suddenly he or she goes into the next room and you can't see them anymore, that's similar to what death is. Death is becoming invisible. We're all invisible. We have a body that we use in this particular realm that is visible. When we're no longer body consciousness, and we're either evicted from body consciousness through disease or an accident, or our soul says it's time to move on, we go to another dimension. Now, in the quantum reality, it is stated that we live in a unified field of awareness, but there are infinite dimensions in this unified field. So we go in another dimension. It's the same teaching that Jesus gave when he said, in my Father's house, there are many mansions, and I go and prepare a place. So in the updated language is, we're in a unified field and there are many dimensions. So death, no one ever experiences death because it doesn't exist. They experience moving from one plane to another and begin to participate in the unfolding of their soul without a physical body temple. I mean, I've been on the other side many times. I've gone to classes on the other side with teachers that have now passed on teaching, and I've been in the back room sitting, and one time they even called me up to teach. So what I'm saying is not from reading a book or reading scriptures and having a belief in life after death or anything like that. It's from a direct encounter that you never die. You know, you continue to unfold, and so the work you're doing here now allows you to really glow with very bright colors as you move into the realm of the invisible, because you're known by your frequency and by the colors you emanate. You know, in this dimension, we may call it a person's auric field is very powerful. You know, when you go into another dimension, people actually see the auric field. You can't hide. In this dimension, people can actually hide motives. You have thieves that can smile. You have politicians that can smile and pretend to be a certain way, but they're really not that way. And people can be fooled by them temporarily, you know. But when you go without a body into the another dimension, you can't fool anyone, because everything shows up. Your colors are there, the vibe is there. So the work that we're doing here, we're actually increasing our auric field and the power moving through us. So even as we are no longer with a body, you know, we're very, very powerful, and we have a tendency to hang with people that are of that ilk. I probably gave you more than you asked for, but there is no death.
I'm hoping you could expand a bit, Michael, on, you said you've been on the other side and taught.
Sure. I used to, when I would go to sleep at night, I would leave the body and I would go to a class sometimes. And I'll tell you one particular experience. I went to a class, and Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science, was teaching. And I was listening to him, and then I would wake up and write notes down on what I'd learned. So the next night when I went, I was sitting in a chair, and he was teaching, and then he looked and he said, tonight's class is going to be given by Michael Beckwith. And I was a little shocked, because I knew I was there, but it was still a little small part of me that thought I could possibly be dreaming this. And he said, please come forward. He's going to tell us about the nature of the experiential universe, something along those lines. So I went up to the front of the room. First of all, I was a little nervous, and then I said, it can be broken down into 8 words. It is done unto you as you believe. And then I counted, it is done unto you as you believe. 8. I said, 8. And a bead of sweat rolled down the side of my face, and I woke up in my bed like in a puddle of sweat, because it was a shock to my system that even though I knew it was real, it became very apparent that I was really there. And it took me a couple of weeks to get over that jolt for me to be able to get back. So I've been in classes. I've visited with friends that have passed over, my mom, great teachers. I've had a number of moments of traveling like that fuel the teachings. You know, a lot of times I get what I'm going to teach from the dream state or from the travel, as well as my own contemplation and the meditation. I was, if you want me to keep going, I was, one time I was with these beings of light, and they gave me a full lesson. And they started off the lesson by telling me that I need to be more compassionate. That was the lesson for the night. And I was a little shocked at that because I feel that I'm a very compassionate person. I have a lot of deep rivers of kindness and compassion and patience with people. I have compassion with people that don't even like me, or they think they don't like me for whatever reason. And so they took me on this teaching all night. And at the end of the lesson, they showed me where I was hard on myself, that I had uh, deep grooves of being hypercritical about myself. And then they showed me that because I was hard on myself, I was subconsciously hard on others. And that the compassion piece, I was compassionate, definitely, but it could be even increased if I was less harsh on myself. And I saw it in an instant, what they were trying to teach me. I caught it. And then when I caught it, they said to me, we're so proud of you. We want to show you what you did in the future. And I said, really? They had me look in this tube. And when I looked in the tube, I couldn't see anything but bright light. And they said, oh, yeah, you can't see it, but we can see it. We're very proud of what you did in the future. And they used the word dead, like the future, the past, and the present were all happening at the same time. And then I came back to the body, and I began to really do greater work on compassion on myself, not being so hard on myself, uh, and just allow myself to be myself. At the same time, give that permission to everyone else. Yeah.
So, Michael, I know that you've shared these stories, and it seems like just from hearing all these stories that you share, that you experience these sorts of really paradigm shifting, you know, very profound experience. It seems like you experience this regularly, and I'm wondering if you have any insight as to why this is, why you seem to experience all these things. Are you willing? Are you receptive? Do you see any difference between that's you and maybe someone that doesn't tend to experience these sorts of things?
First of all, everyone has a level of encounter and experience every night. They don't remember them. That's happening. Sometimes I'll see people and work on people that I know, you know, and when I see them the next day, sometimes they don't even remember that we were together, or they will faintly remember. Did I dream about you last night? You know, so everyone's having everything, a lot of things when they dream. Now, meditation prepares you, makes you more receptive to these kind of things. Now, I used to think that when I had my initial opening and then others after that, and then one even 3 weeks ago that was quite profound for me, it was because I was hard-headed. It was like when I was coming up and I left the church, I was more agnostic, atheistic. You couldn't get me a spiritual community. That I thought it was all poppycock, you know, it was just people. Had to happen for me. It had to happen that way for me, in other words, because I couldn't have got it any other way. Because I had an intense desire to be my best self. I didn't put spiritual jargon on. I just wanted to be the best that I could be. That happened for me. Other people may not need something that dramatic. There are individuals who are called once born souls, individuals that come with a natural proclivity towards spirituality. They have a natural interest in it. They study, they meditate, and they don't really need a big hit on the head, a big dramatic awakening like I did, you know, even though I had a natural something as a kid, but I cut it off. So I needed something. So I think everybody gets it in their own way. If there's two things that are necessary, the two greatest technologies are sincerity and earnestness. That if you're sincere, really sincere about your spiritual growth, development, and unfoldment, if you're sincere about your awakening, and I'm talking about some people are more sincere about the fruits of the awakening. They want the byproduct of the awakening. They want greater levels of manifestation, or they want the outcome of awakening. But when you're really sincere about awakening and having conscious contact with the presence, and you combine that with earnestness, that's the second greatest technology. Sincerity and earnestness. Earnestness means you have a level of practice that you do whether you feel like it or not. You're earnest in it. And so some days you get up, you don't feel like it. It's not a good day, you're in a bad mood or whatever, but you do a little something anyway. And some days you feel really like I can sit, I can really, I'm going to tune into agape, then I'm going to study, then I'm going to meditate, But if you combine earnestness and sincerity and earnestness, then something begins to happen. There is a slow eroding, a cleansing of the filters, and a more availability to see reality. And sometimes it's dramatic. And sometimes you notice in hindsight that you've changed, that you may have had something you constantly worried about. And then you notice, I'm not worried about that anymore. What happened? There was a change that took place, but it didn't come with lights and cameras. It was just the process of just cleaning up that filter, digging the root up of that limited perception, and then change occurred, you see. So I don't want people to romanticize other people's experiences. They're there primarily for inspiration and transparency and possibility, but everyone will get it in their own way.
Beautiful. Thank you, Michael. So we have a question from Mary, an interesting question from Mary. Mary says, I have seen the whiteness that erases all that is around it. I have felt the spontaneous expansion and energy course through my shell, even as it encountered the roof of the car I sat in. I have had movements of self to walk in the steps of others, seen the future, and felt emotions I could not comprehend until events unfolded, so much more. And I'm here to ask, so what?
the so what is a constant unfolding of who we are. And with every activation of potential within us, we come into states of bliss. And so the so what is the bliss state from activation of potential and the delivery of our giftedness. Everyone is unique. There's no repeats. There's no one exactly like us. So each one has come to reveal the cosmos in a way that only they can. So the activation of potential allows us to share what we've come to share. And that's the game, to constantly unfold and to be a soulful artist of your soul. You see, a soulful artist of who you are. And that's the game, bliss. And that can come in the levels of service and creativity, generosity, architect of building a kind and just global world. Everyone will have their thing to do based on who they are. And when you discover that, it fits. And the joy that can't come from the world can't give you any joy. It's a counterfeit joy, if at all. The joy comes from you're in alignment with yourself, sharing your who you are. That's your purpose. Your purpose is to reflect the cosmos in a way that has never happened before, you see. So all of those experiences that you had are just like breadcrumbs about your closeness to it. Now it's about stabilizing those states. So it's not up and down, it's a stabilization so that you can deliver you and what you're to do at this time, and then what you're to do as what we call time. Time doesn't really exist, but as the soul unfolds.
Thank you, Michael. So from this grand view, we come down to something more concrete. Carol asks, how can I forgive my sister for stealing $60,000 out of mom's probate?
Okay, well, the word how has to be changed to willingness, and I call it the challenge of forgiveness. I recently went through something a couple of weeks ago in which there was a tremendous amount stolen from me. I mean, big amount stolen from me. And so I'm under the challenge of forgiveness. I call it, it's a challenge. You take on the challenge of it, knowing that it's not going to be easy. And you have to give up being right, even though you are. And so what is forgiveness? Forgiveness is the giving forth, eliminating the toxicity in our own soul that we're projecting onto another person based on what they did or what they didn't do. In this case, your sister stole money from the probate situation. And so you're going to have to release the toxic thought about that. You're not going to forget the fact that she stole the money, but you're going to have to release the toxicity around it so that you're not doing yourself harm. When you're living in a state of unforgiveness, you are producing toxic chemicals that are debilitating your immune system, blocking your coherence of the brain, prematurely aging you. And so unforgiveness is a kind of self-abuse. I'm abusing myself in the name of someone else. So forgiveness means you begin to have an understanding of a lack of understanding. In other words, your sister had a lack of understanding. She operated from her reptilian survival self. She stole. It was against the law. All the things that we can go down the list about what it means. So you're going to have a level of compassion about the individual who would do such a thing. Why would somebody steal from their family? You see, so that's a big hole in her. That's something that needs to be healed. So you just being mad, is only going to hurt you. So you have to go beyond that, and you have to be willing to forgive. And so the first stage of forgiveness is willingness. The second stage of forgiveness is seeing your sister in front of you. You don't have to do this with her right now, but you close your eyes and you imagine that she's in front of you. And you say to her, what you did and what you this is for everybody, what you did or didn't do cannot affect my destiny or my happiness. I forgive you. I cut the cords of emotionality and set you free. I wish you well. That's stage 2. Stage 3 is going into your own inner awareness and actually wishing the person well. Even though your emotional body may not want to do it, you start to wish them well. You want to see them prosper. You want to see them happy. You don't want to evoke revenge energy. You don't want to evoke, well, I sure hope karma gets them. They have to deal with that on their own. Their own karmic propensities will catch up with them, but that's not yours to do. That's why it states in the scriptures, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. It's the law. The Lord means law. Vengeance is mine, says the law of life. So you wish them well, and then you finally get to a stage where you actually create a positive energy by doing something good for them. Now, here's the tricky part. It can be anonymous. You don't have to actually let them know. You can send a $1 bill in the mail anonymously. That's just to get the energy of affirmation flowing from you. So first stage is willingness. The second stage is the forgiveness process. Oh, there's another stage. Third stage is wishing them well. The fourth stage is walking in their shoes. In other words, you imagine you're them, and you try to see life from their perspective. That builds compassion. You see, when you try to see it from their perspective. Again, not making it right. It's not making it right. It's just seeing it, and your intuition will start to guide you. Oh, they felt impoverished. If they have a hole in them, they're unhealed. You start to, and then the next level is to actually do something for them, and that can be anonymous. Now, I call it a challenge. So when you actually take on the challenge of forgiveness, who's going to really benefit is the person that's doing the forgiving. It doesn't exonerate the person that's being forgiven, other than your energy is no longer connected to that particular downward spiral. You get all the benefit of that. Your energy is clear. Your channel is clear. Prosperity can flow through you. Great ideas can flow through you. You're not prematurely aging yourself anymore. Your immune system becomes enhanced, and you benefit from redemption. You're redeeming the thought forms of toxicity and transmuting them into a higher frequency of forgiveness and love and compassion. You benefit. If they don't change, of course, then they keep reaping the law of their own personal law of lack. They keep reaping that, and their life essence diminishes in many cases. So it's your sister. Take on the challenge of forgiveness. Take off the word how and ask and replace it with willing. I'm willing to forgive.
Beautiful, Michael. Thank you. I know I don't have to ask you if you need a break, because this is only getting started for you, typically for your. So we have a question from Shell. Shell asks, wondering how you deal with PTSD and making peace, love in life.
Post-traumatic stress, is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
An individual. Okay. Post-traumatic stress, of course, is post, something you've gone through, but you're still reliving it. And so in the meditative process, as you're meditating, you actually come to a moment when it comes up, because it will come up, that you actually embrace it. You actually look at the emotion and feel the emotion. You look at it. You don't try to make it go away. You actually look at it. And then after a while, you become aware that you are bigger than it, because you are aware of it. You're embracing it. You're surrounding it. Now, as you become aware of the energy that's coming up in post-traumatic stress, just by you observing it, you are transmuting the energy of it. And so two things happen. One, energy is never created or destroyed. It just changes based on perception. So by you watching it with the intention of waking up, with the intention of being whole, that those thought forms begin to change. And secondly, as we talked a little bit about earlier, you start to see the underlying perception or belief that's driving it. It's generally a fear belief that was embedded in a time of stress. And that fear belief got into the nervous system. And whenever there's any kind of triggering, any kind of stress, then that belief activates that anxiety again. With this practice, you will see the belief. And you can even ask, let me see what I'm believing right now. And you'll see the belief. And it'll say, I'm afraid of death. I'm afraid to be annihilated. I'm afraid I'll never make it. It'll be a belief in there that's being activated. And now you can dissect that belief and begin to replace it with a stronger, more affirmative belief. Everything is always working together for my good. I am divinely protected and safe and secure in life's hands. You have to work with this until there's a transmutation of energy. You see, the other thing about that is oftentimes when people are in this kind of anxious moment, they project the worst case scenarios onto the future because of what's happened in the past. They will project worst case scenarios onto the future. And so we have to, I call it, take back our mind, where instead of projecting worst case scenarios into the future, we begin to re-enchant our imagination to develop best case scenarios, things working out better than we could possibly imagine, until a new groove is cut in our neurons, a new groove is cut with our imagination, and then the body and the body of affairs follow. So I hope I'm embracing this.
Absolutely, Michael, thank you. So we have some folks with hands raised, and let's see if I could bring one in here. Sometimes it takes just a moment. Now, Claudia, let me ask you to start your video. If you can you hear us, Claudia?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so we can hear you. Do you have a quick question for Michael B. Beckwith?
Yes, I do. I have noticed, I just love your lessons. You're just fantastic, and you're just what I need now. In the second video about shrinking, it was extremely interesting. And for the past several months, I have been shrinking and articulating it, but not in your words and not with your insight. And you gave me that yesterday, and I just want to thank you. Is it best to stay in a situation where you know you are not being your real self? Because I know that my frequency is being raised. I'm doing so much spiritual work right now. I just finished your workshop on shift. I've done your 31 days and 31 ways, or vice versa. So is it best to stay in that situation or to leave it? And I'm speaking of one specific group whose theology and whose view of spiritual matters or religion is very different from mine, but they're wonderful, caring, loving people. But we are not syncing, and it's causing me distress.
Okay. Well, I think you're answering your own question. If it's causing you distress, then it's possible to maintain a friendship without being involved in the religiosity or the spiritual community, whatever it is that you're involved in. But you explained it already. It's causing you distress in your life, and so that's a signal that perhaps you shouldn't be practicing at that level with them. It doesn't mean you throw away the friendships, if it's possible. I knew of a powerful woman who was a deeply powerful spiritual practitioner, and she was married to a man that thought it was all a bunch of BS. He loved her, she loved him, but she was on the path and he wasn't. And one day, I'll tell you, one day she was driving home from a seminar, and the engine blew up. She was at night driving home by herself, and it was smoking. She had to pull over. This predates, this is a lady by the name of Victoria Pappy. She was a great spiritual practitioner. Predates cell phone. She didn't have a cell phone, so she couldn't call anybody to pick her up. So she closed her eyes. She saw the car starting. She prayed. She drove home. She got home. She told her husband, go check on the car. It blew up on the highway. I drove it home, but I think you're gonna need to take it to the shop. So he went and looked under the trunk, and he said, you didn't drive this car home. She said, yes, I did. She said, it's impossible. He says, these wires for the battery are burned up. You couldn't have possibly driven the car home. She said, but he saw her pulling into the driveway. She said, yes, I did. At that moment, he became aware that what she was dealing with was way beyond his reasonable, rational, logical mind. And he became more supportive of her because of that particular miracle. Now, that story may not be apropos with what you're going through, but I'm saying that there can be, I was making the point to say there can be relationships with people, even though you may not vibe on the same level spiritually as in that particular marriage until that miracle happened in Victoria's life. So, but you said the key word, distress, which means you have to really look at it and say, do I need to be here on a regular basis?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you.
So we have a question from Bobby Joe, Michael, saying, I understand that life unfolds in perfect divinity, but is there any way to quicken the process to further myself along a little faster?
Well, I think this is what you're doing now. You're actually devoting and committing time to studying these teachings and really practicing whatever panache and I are giving you. There's in class, there's the basics and there's an advance. The basics is the theory, and then the advance is practice. And so to quicken this, you have to practice, but then you have to add this to your practice. You actually have to come into an awareness that where you want to get to, you're already there. It's a paradox, you see, because you can't get there from here. But when you get there, there is here. You see, it's a paradox. So if you try really, really hard, then you're giving a message that you're not there. You're not. So it's coming into practice with a kind of lightheadedness, having an awareness that everything is unfolding perfectly. You're not rushing, you're not manipulating, you're not forcing. And then you notice great leaps take place. And as I said earlier, sometimes you notice that great leaps are taking place but you've had no, it wasn't experiential. Just suddenly you're different. Suddenly what concerns you, you're not concerned about anymore. Suddenly you know something that you didn't know before. That's called an insight. You see, when you have an insight. And so the fastest way is practice, but not practice with rush. Practice with, I'm here. You see, I'm here. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Michael. We have I'll take one more from chat, and then maybe we can get to another raised hand. But Marisa asks, can we heal from chronic disease by using what we learned from this class?
Every disease can be healed. It's the individual that has to come into alignment with wholeness. So I'm not sure in these modules do we cover that. But I would say yes, chronic disease. And I've been teaching for 40 years. You may not believe it because I was born 40 years ago. But I've seen everything under the sun heal. When there was an alignment. I worked with a woman who she was given 2 or 3 months to live, cancer all over her body. And when you can see the pictures of her now, bright, beautiful, young, doctors can't believe it. They didn't understand it. But yeah, I've seen so much. So it is possible. When you come into alignment with these practices and principles, it's like stem cells. It'll go to where you need it most. So if in fact it's about physical healing and you have an awareness of an encounter with the presence, then perhaps for you, it'll show up in your body temple. For others, it may show up in their mental body. For others, it may show up in their emotional body. For others, it may show up financially in abundance. For others, it may show up in their relationships. It kind of goes where it's needed most, and then it stabilizes throughout your life.
So before we get to another hand raise, Michael, I know you bring in this idea of the mind, body, and the body temple, and I feel that you may have some things to share about the body temple, because the way you talk about the body temple is it's like a sanctified way.
Yeah, I think that individuals must see it as a temple, and you must, one, clean out the temple, the body temple, and because it's living biology, you must feed it properly. It's like a pet, so you feed it proper nutrition, proper hydration. You walk it like a pet. You exercise it. But here's an understanding that most people don't have, is that you only get 10% of the energy of your day through the food you eat. 90% comes directly from the field that's around you. The living quantum field intermingles with your body, intermingles with your melanin, intermingles with your antenna on your mitochondria. And so you're actually getting 90% from the direct contact with the field, which means if you're in spiritual practice, you're getting clean and pure energy. You see, so the food is good. You want to have good food. You want to have living food. You want to have proper nutrition, proper supplements, proper exercise. Very important. But 90% of the energy is coming from the invisible, you see. And so when you take care of the body, and then you give yourself permission to tap in to the field, the living field that's around you, now you understand the mystical teachings of Jesus when he said, man and woman is not meant to live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. He was speaking about a direct encounter with the light, you see. So many people are dealing with dense food, but they're not dealing with light. You have to have both. So I've just noticed that two things. People, they'll take better care of their physical home or their car than they do their own body. They'll throw junk food in there and fast food and not rest, but their car will be immaculate. They'll polish it and get it cleaned up and go for the regular checkups with the car and put the best gas in it. And then when it comes to their body, they're just throwing anything in the mouth. You know, oh, this tastes good. Ooh, it's a piece of candy. It tastes good. You know, and so we have to really start to revere the body temple in a different way. But there's another point that I guess will come back. Yeah, but it probably had something to do with the field itself. Oh, I know. Even when you look at the news, you know, the news can be very, very bad for your health because they don't deal with what's important. They deal with a paradigm that they want to move the herd into. And so you look at the news. I happened to watch it the other day. I don't watch it all the time, but I watch it just to see what the next level of hijacking is going to be. And so now the whole conversation is about washing hands and masks. And so people are talking about masks. Should I wear it? Should I not wear it? And it's silly, you know, but no one's talking about your daily dosage of vitamin C, and vitamin D, and vitamin A, exercise, meditation. Those things absolutely magnify the immune system so you don't have to be worried about the COVID flu, you see, but that's not even on the news. What's on the news is mask and washing hands. So people are running around here scared based on that. And we have the most powerful healing mechanism. We have an immune system that will kill anything if it's properly taken care of. And so I want real strong metaphysicians to rise up and understand that they can handle anything. You know, take your mind back, do spiritual practice, eat the right stuff, and then watch. You won't be afraid like so many people are these days. Yeah.
It's wonderful, Michael. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And I love this. I love this idea of food is just a minor part of the energy that we're actually using.
So, you know, the person that really speaks there is a good friend of mine, Bruce Lipton, the evolutionary biologist. He really breaks it down from a biological level. You know, I mean, obviously I've known it from a spiritual level, but he breaks it down from real living biology. It's not airy-fairy woo-woo stuff. You know, it's like living truth that you get 90% of the energy that you need every day, not from food, but from the field itself.
Makes sense. I think we know this intuitively. So we have Key on here. Let's see, Key, do you hear us?
Hello? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we hear you. Do you have a quick question?
Yes. Michael, how do you call a thing, like systemic racism, sexism, homophobia, or a dynamic with a family member? How do you call a thing without going into or activating the old story?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you're onto something there. I like to say that's what we do. We call a thing. So like, obviously we've been living under a couple of pandemics. We've been living under the pandemic of the flu. We've been living under the pandemic of the things you just talked about, the homophobia, the sexism, the racism. So you're able to say, this is the experience the human race is having. It's not the ultimate experience. It's not the final experience, but it's definitely up. You can't pretend it's not there. That's what it means by calling a thing a thing. You don't pretend it doesn't exist. You don't make an excuse about it. You don't hide from it. You say, this is what's up. Now, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to deconstruct homophobia? How are we going to deconstruct racism? And then we begin to develop strategies of deconstruction, and we begin to have a vision of what's possible, of a world that works for the highest and best within us all. You know, for those of you who see me speak at Agape, I'll call a thing. I don't get lost in it, you know, but I'm not going to deny that certain things are happening. But then we have to go to spiritual principle about oneness and unity and the practice of coming into those higher states in order to be emissaries of what wants to be born at this time in human history. So right now, everything is up. I like to say everything is in flux. Everything is fluxed up, which means it's a time for great change. So things that were hidden before aren't hidden anymore, which means that it's up for conversation, courageous conversations, great introspection. How are we participating in these things, even unconsciously, so that we can make changes within ourselves and then make changes in policy and procedures at places of employment, within the government, etc. You know, I know there's a law being proposed now here in Los Angeles by the supervisor, Mark Ridley Thomas, to make racism a public health issue as well, and to really root it out within every aspect of government. That couldn't have been done before. It was a thing wasn't called the thing. Now it's, you know, a thing is a thing, and people can see it. And when they're going to make it a public health issue, as well as the other issues in terms of civil rights issues and illegal and things of that particular nature. Now, am I answering your question since you're still there?
Yes, thank you. And I just want to say real quick, I just adore your teachings. Thank you so much. You've been a guiding light, and the energy that's come from you. And I just sing your praises and thank you so much. And oh, one more thing. What do you put in your macchiato in the morning? Your synergy macchiato.
Well, I have a couple of drinks. There's one that it is macchiato, actually. It's actually a friend of mine named Aaron created it, and he has to put it back on the market. But it's maca, you know, it's like this 3 or 4 to 5 different strains of maca. So we use all the macas, different strains, organic, of course, along with some organic cacao. You know, that becomes the base of it. And then you add whatever you need to add, you know, for taste or for sweetening, if you want a little manuka honey, you know, but that's a hot drink that I drink, you see.
Okay.
And then I have my shakes that I make with my avocado and my blueberries and my dandelion greens and spinach, pure synergy green drink, some vegan vanilla protein powder, along with almond milk and oat milk. It's a very powerful meal, you know. And I've had one today, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Key. And thank you, Michael. We have the modern day Wheaties.
There you go.
So James asks, I've been practicing spiritual principles for many years now, and I'm content with my growth. It's helped me well. However, I have always struggled with concentration and focusing issues. I am all over the map and flooded with ideas and thoughts. I'm wondering how I can turn what I've learned in my spiritual path and address my focus issues.
Mm-hmm. The way that you operate as a genius is that you take one issue and you work on it for no more than 2 hours. And then you, like if you're one of those minds that so many things are coming through, you're a Renaissance person and you have so many things you want to do, then you take 1, 2 hours, and you take another one, 2 hours, you take another one, 2 hours, take another one, 2 hours. Now, focus and concentration is something you can practice in your meditation. You know, there's meditation, which is paying undistractable attention to reality. Then there's contemplation, where you put your attention on something very specific. So you can begin to practice contemplation and focus until you have dominion over your attention, so that you can actually see. Most people don't have dominion over their attention. The world of phenomena swirls and their attention is just pulled and grabbed by anything. But once you have dominion over your attention, you can say, okay, I'm going to be attentive to A. B, C, and D maybe start flooding around you, but you're not going to pay attention to that. You're going to stay with A. Now, how you develop that is in meditation, by just paying attention to the breath. Every time it goes off, you keep bringing it back, keep bringing it back, keep bringing it back, until you have a modicum of dominion, you see. And then that translates into your everyday life. You have a great attention span based on meditation, contemplation, and focus. Again, it comes down to practicing this, you know.
Thank you, Michael. I think it's you bring in the whole intention deficit disorder sort of thing. I love this.
Yeah, many years ago.
Yeah. So Beverly asked, and we just have a few more minutes, so let's see, maybe we have a couple more questions. But Beverly asks, is there a unity before the soul, before karma?
Is there a unity? We come from unity. So when you go before time, Time is a mental construct. Time is the measurement of the distance between objects, and it's the measurement of the duration of an experience someone is having in their perception or thought. So since we're all one, then that's eliminated. There's no space between us. And once you release a particular thought form, that dissolves and time collapses. So each of us are timeless beings, pre-incarnational, timeless beings without karmic propensity. Now, we develop karmic propensity through experience. You make a decision, you do something, you act a certain way, then you start to develop, you start to share energy, and then that energy becomes a part of your karmic propensity. I know your question is, before that, is there a unity? The answer is yes. You come from unity, you come from timeless. And then this is the deal, this is what we're about. We're bringing the timeless into time and using time as a canvas to paint with the colors of our soul. Just as an artist will go into the timeless and maybe grab a beautiful idea and then come and use the brush to paint on the canvas this idea that the artist is getting from the timeless. Now we're doing this, but the thing about it is many people are time blinded. They're caught in time and they have forgotten their connection to unity. So they're just creating karma, just creating experience. They're stepping on each other's toes. They're in fear, they're stealing, they're doing all kinds of things out of fear. So they're creating more and more experience. The idea is to come back to the timeless and heal the time blindedness, come back to this state of unity, and then paint with the color of your soul. Be creative. See?
Such a beautiful way to put it. Thank you, Michael. And perhaps this is the last question. This is from Teshere, and Teshere says, "Thank you, Rev Michael, for your guidance and love. My question is regarding activating my mystical cord of memory, which I allowed to happen during meditation. How do I maintain this awareness and participate in this memory and share it with others who may not understand what I am experiencing?"
So for people who don't know what she's talking about, I have a CD that's called Transcendence. And people, you can get it on iTunes, Spotify, whatever. The last track on that Transcendence CD is called Activating the Mystic Cord of Memory, where I take people through a meditation and have them remember, why they are on the planet. Okay. So she's asking, how can I stay in that sweet remembrance? So the idea is, when you have practice, there become moments of insight where you suddenly remember something. You remember a belief that becomes more embodied. You have an insight into something you thought you knew, but now you know it better. Or you have an actual, you actually tap the mystic cord of memory. You actually remember your soul's purpose or the decisions you made before you got here. The idea is quickly, whether it's from a dream state that you're waking up from or meditation, as soon as you get a little nuance about it, you start to write it down. To as much as you can, even if it doesn't make sense. You write it down, then you say out loud what you've written while you're reading it. So you're activating all the senses. You're activating the tactile, you're writing, you're seeing with your eyes, you're saying with your power of your voice, you're hearing with your ears. And so you start to embody it on a deeper level. And then with this kind of practice, you'll notice that you start to remember. You start to remember the future. You remember what's unfolding. You remember what you promised yourself before you got here, because you didn't show up on the earth accidentally. You on purpose chose to be here for a purpose and a mission. And you'll remember it. And then you won't be satisfied until you're pulled by that vision and become coherent with it. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you for this beautiful response. And we're at the top of the hour already. And boy, thank you, Michael. I know we have another mentoring in a couple weeks, in about a week and a half. It's on Tuesday. But thank you everybody for being here. And if you just keep your questions in mind and remember to bring them in soon, because you can see how we get flooded. We have about 100 messages that I haven't even looked at yet.
Wow.
But Michael, do you have any closing thoughts for us as I know there's just so much going on and so much change? Do you have any thoughts for us as we kind of disperse into these times?
The thing about this class here is that we're developing a center of coherence, which means everybody at their own pace, their own level are studying and practicing, but it's creating its own community. Now, the beautiful thing about that is if anyone has an insight, then it affects the whole community of everyone who is a part of this. So high tide lifts all boats, but an individual that gets lifted up also pulls everyone else forward. So I would suggest at different times you enter into the land of gratitude for all the people in the class, so that you become more cohere with the mastermind that's being created, the master heart actually, and be pulled up. And we are in a time of great change and great turbulence, but always remember this, that the chaos theory, which is beyond a theory at this point, in the layman's terms says, if you can step back far enough from what appears to be chaos, you'll see an underlying order that's trying to emerge. You step off far enough from a caterpillar that appears to be dying, you see a butterfly, a seed that's being planted into the ground, it dies, it's chaotic. There's a tree that's trying to be born. So with all the stuff that's going on the planet, through spiritual practice, you start to see that there's something trying to be born now. And though the harbinger or the keepers of the old paradigm and the news media is going to try to keep you in the old paradigm and flood you with fear, you start to extricate yourself from that, and you start to see something else is trying to be born. What is the protest all about? What's going on? There's something trying to be born that's new. And if you can see that and feel that, you'll be a participant in it according to your own pattern. You won't do what everybody else is doing. You'll do what you're called to do. And you'll be doing it with a level of peace and assurance that you're not a bystander of history. You're actually a participant in it. And creating this field is a great way to participate.
Boy, thank you, Michael. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your wisdom, and thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And I'll see you in a little while. Continue to complete the modules so that when we meet the next time, you'll have another level of questions based on those particular modules.
Excellent. Love you all, and God bless.
Peace and blessings, everyone.
Blessings returned.